Hey everyone, my name is Daniel Moyer. I'm one of the sales support trainers here for Briggs & Stratton Energy Solutions. Joining me today is Nathan. Hi Nathan.
Hi, Daniel. Good to see you all this morning. Welcome to this webinar. Um, we're glad to have you join us, and we'll be talking about mastering energy storage sales strategies for success.
That's right. This is not a NAPCEP accredited course. Nathan and I do host many that do have NAPCEP credits, so stay tuned for some of those upcoming ones. Another housekeeping item is the chat has been disabled, but the Q&A is open. So if you have any strategies for what's worked for you in sales, in-home sales, go ahead and put it in the Q&A. Let us know. We'd love your feedback as well. Everybody on this call will be getting a recording of this webinar as well as a copy of all the slides. So any links that you see, you'll have access to. Well, let's go ahead and get started. First up, a couple of upcoming shows. Energy Expo down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, coming up, and that's going to be August 20th and 21st. And one of the bigger shows of the industry, RE Plus, will be in Vegas. Nathan, what's something you like about going to these expos and these shows?
Well, I certainly like interacting with everyone. I like seeing the different technology that's coming out. It's great to see what the competition and what the supporting companies are doing as well. So seeing things like, I think the last show that I was at, I was impressed to see load management systems. And Daniel, we talked about combiners. Uh, Load management through combining boxes. So the inverter technology seems to be changing as well. So certainly love many things about being part of the solar community, the solar and battery community. And it still somehow feels somewhat small, right? We get to see some of the same people. So if you are coming by the Energy Expo, check out our booth 145. And then, of course, if you're out in Vegas in September, we'll be there. Our booth is there. Please let us know if you're coming. Go ahead and put it in the Q&A if you're coming to one of these shows.
Yeah, we'll make sure we have a special gift for you. And as far as the RE Plus, I know we usually get free expo passes. So let us know right now, and I'll make sure we put you on the list and we can get you free expo passes for some of these events. Looking forward to everyone. Another big announcement right now is that the 30% IRC, the ITC tax credit for solar and battery storage is not a done deal of being gone. So there is an opportunity to still get your voice heard. What you're seeing on the screen here is from the Solar Energy Industries Association, Defend American Energy. So the QR code there will take you to this page and go ahead and put your name in. There's a lot of events, a lot of ways to get your voice heard to make sure that we keep that 30% tax credit available for solar and storage or just solar alone as well. Make sure you also join any of your local solar industry associations. For example, here in California, we have California Solar and Storage Association. By giving money to these organizations, they're out there getting your voice heard to protect our industry. So keep that in mind. Well, Nathan, what we're talking about today is how to sell, right? The idea that we're going to be going into somebody's house, we're going to be sitting at their kitchen table, we're going to be listening, right, to what their concerns are, what their questions are, coming up with the proposal, and then addressing their questions and their concerns and making sure we ask for the close of the deal. Before we do that, let's just quickly introduce some of our products. Nathan, what are we looking at? We're looking at a Solarc, right? The hybrid inverter paired with our battery.
Yeah, this is the Limitless 15K from Solarc. One of the key features of this is this product, I think in 2021, introduced the 200 amp pass-through to the market. So this inverter allows you to pass 200 amps through from utility to your load center. And essentially that means for most installs, you can pass all of the utility through the inverter, which allows the inverter to manage your power and combine different power sources like power from our batteries as shown there, like power from solar, like power from a generator. And Briggs & Stratton sells both batteries and generators that pair excellently with Solarc. In fact, I'm running a unit that looks similar to what's in the bottom left. Maybe doesn't look that similar. It looks like a real installation. But it's a great inverter, and it works very well with that battery stack that's there. It's an excellent pairing.
Great. Nathan, you had mentioned whole home backup, right? The idea that we're going to be backing up an entire home, and that's becoming more and more common. Historically, what we've always done is partial home backup, even on our generators, using like select circuits. But I think the market and the homeowners really want that whole home backup. Just to take a step back really quick and kind of understand what an energy storage solution is. And I think this is a great conversation to have with the homeowner to break it down to them that in a lot of ways, the inverter, which is sitting here in the middle, is kind of the hub of everything. That's where the battery is either charged or discharged. That's where we can bring in solar and charge up the batteries or take over the home loads. And if we satisfied the battery and the home's loads, we can even send it back to the grid as well. And that's another key thing that we need to have a discussion with our homeowners is understanding the net metering policies of the homeowner utilities company, because this bidirectional arrow we see here going between the grid and the energy storage system isn't always a dual-way street now, a two-way street. In a lot of jurisdictions, such as here in California, we can backfeed the grid, but we're paid a wholesale rate. So we're really not compensated very much if we ever send power back to the grid. So here in California and other states across the country, that what we're seeing is that without the ability to send power back to the grid, the homeowners aren't going to see a financial return unless they pair it with energy storage. That we're now able to take the solar energy produced during the day or capture the sun's energy and convert it into electricity and then charge up the batteries. Then we can then use that stored energy in the battery to supply the home loads at night. Of course, explaining how the control in the app will work is really crucial to making sure the homeowners understand they'll have control, they'll have visibility on their home's production and consumption as well. Of
So you
course,
make a great point,
yeah.
Daniel. You know, if you do need to buy electricity during winter months, right, where the days are shorter and maybe the solar's not sized quite big enough to cover all those loads at nighttime, there's also the potential to do time of use, right? And so you can buy electricity when it's cheapest and then discharge that battery when during peak demand rates, which are typically in the afternoons, evenings. So some ways to get return on investment for your customers. In fact, you can use that time of use. Our rates are double here in California for peak time, right? So it's I know Daniel and I have talked about this recently, but I'm paying 62 cents a kilowatt hour during peak demand, which is in the evenings. And I'm paying 31 cents, I believe it is, during nighttime, right? So I could charge up my battery at night and then discharge it in the evening if I had one of these systems on my residence. And I don't yet, but I plan to eventually.
As Nathan mentioned, we also make generators, and a lot of times generators are a key piece to making these things very resilient. Generators have always played a role in off-grid. If we have a winter time and a big storm comes through and the solar is not producing, we need a way to be able to charge up these batteries, and that's where a generator comes into play. Nathan, you and I have other webinars where we talk the whole hour about integrating generators, how to start them and stop them. So stay tuned for some of those upcoming talks. Just know that these energy storage systems, that Solarc has the ability to automatically start and stop the generator based on the state of charge of the battery, and then run that generator at a pretty high load point. Run it hard, charge up the batteries, take over the loads, and then shut that generator off, saving fuel, saving runtime, and saving the noise associated with those generators running.
Yeah, and running that generator at the most efficient point as well. So great points, Daniel. We mentioned earlier about the difference between partial home backup and whole home backup. And so when you're talking to the customer, the customer is going to want to save money, of course. And one way to save money is to only back up those critical loads in a grid outage situation. So in a grid outage situation, in a partial home backup, you've only moved over those core critical loads, which might be the lighting, the refrigeration system, communications, internet, maybe TV, etc. But you're not backing up the hot water heater. You're not backing up the spa or the pool pump, etc. In a whole home backup scenario, you can still load shed some of those loads by using a smart panel, or even using the smart port feature of the Solark and having a panel that you can shut off based on battery state of charge. But in general, most all of the loads in the home are going to be backed up, and it's your job to maybe educate the consumer, hey, in a grid down situation, don't run that electric dryer, right? That's not the time to be doing those kind of things. So the big difference here, of course, besides cost, you can use a smaller battery in the partial home backup scenario. In the whole home backup scenario, it's actually an easier install because you're not installing a separate load center, right? You're kind of putting that solar in between the main panel where all the loads are already wired in, um, and the utility port. So
And even in a partial home backup, right, Nathan, we can not only back up partial home, but we can still backfeed that main electrical panel to support time of use loads without exceeding those consumption of those loads, right?
absolutely, whenever the grid is up, we can certainly backfeed the main panel and use the CTs that come with the Solarc to minimize power pulled from the grid. Yeah, great point.
30% tax credit. And this is a key point when we're sitting down at the kitchen table to be careful on how we're discussing the 30% tax credit. Always say something like, I'm not a tax professional, talk to your tax professional. But really what happens is that if you go out and buy a $20,000 system at the if you're like me, where Briggs and Stratton takes money out of every single paycheck, so at the end of the year, I don't owe the feds anything. The feds don't owe me anything. If I were to go out and buy a $20,000 system, I would get 30% tax credit. I would actually get a check, a return for $6,000. It's important to understand and explain to the homeowner that they need to have a tax liability, right? If you have an older retired couple that maybe doesn't pay taxes, without having that tax liability, they may not get that. Again, have them talk to their tax professional if they have any detailed questions on that as well. Nathan, we talked about saving money, but really when we're sitting down at the kitchen table and we're explaining the benefits a lot of this, backup power or the ability to keep the lights on if the neighborhood power goes out, I think is one of the most attractive and valuable aspects of these systems. The idea that you can off-grid your home and you can have, like you mentioned, the internet, the TV, the heating, the blower fan in that furnace, the refrigerator keep working. What is it worth it to you to not lose all of the food in your refrigerator? And unlike a generator, these systems have a very quick backup switchover time, right? We're talking milliseconds. And a lot of times homeowners don't even realize that the power has gone out, that the transfer time is so quick, unless they maybe look out the window and see their neighbor's lights have gone out. Or maybe they're looking at their app and they can see that they're now in an off-grid mode as well. These things are really high tech, and the technology is always advancing, although I think it's really matured right now with these hybrid inverters with solar, the idea that all of the parts and pieces are now in one box as well. We already talked about time of use. One thing we didn't talk about, Nathan, was demand response or demand management. Would you care to talk a little bit about what that is? That's mainly commercial, right?
Yeah, so there are utilities that charge based on your peak rate. And if you go over a certain threshold, maybe it's 25 kilowatts, that you'll get a surcharge for the month. And it's been over a year, but I remember talking to a chicken farmer who was getting $600 a month in just demand charges, because when he had multiple devices kicking on at the same time, he would hit very high peak rates. And by integrating, in this case, it was a 208 system, solar and a 208 system with batteries, he was able to shave off those peaks and prevent draws above that 25, and I'm not sure that that's the number, but 25 kilowatts or so uh, threshold. And so the solar can do that. It can monitor the power that's being drawn from the grid and prevent you from getting those peak charges. So if that's something you're facing, feel free to reach out. We can have one of our application engineers consult with you.
Before we move on, Nathan, one another selling point when we're talking to homeowners is how the battery looks. We as installers, we install something, we run back to the van, run back to the truck, and we're gone. These homeowners have to look at these systems for 10 or 20 years. So having something that looks attractive, like our battery, I would argue, and also being able to hang it on the wall. In this example, we see it down on the ground, matters to homeowners. And so make sure you highlight that during the sales process as well.
Yeah, and this
You,
is, if you're in a temperate climate or a climate that typically doesn't get very cold, this unit will operate. It will charge from 14 degrees Fahrenheit and up, and you can install this outdoors. And even if you get below that 14-degree threshold, there might be, there might be times when you can't charge in the coldest of times. But being able to mount this outside, right? Not losing garage space, not losing interior space, not losing floor space, mounting it up on the wall outside. Certainly here in California, that's where I would install it.
Yeah, and we do have other batteries that have heating options as well if you do need to install it outside in those cold climates. Another great thing I like, Nathan, is that we still have a status LED. It's kind of a fuel gauge on top of the battery. So sometimes people aren't very tech savvy and they just want to know what the state of charge of their battery is. They can just walk out there and see that little fuel gauge.
I
For you,
appreciate seeing that too, Daniel. One of the things about the fuel gauge that's nice, I have one of these here in the shop with me, and that third LED was blinking at me when I came in, and I knew that that meant that the battery is charging, right? Solar was out, it was early. I came in, and solar was, trickling in, and the battery's blinking, and I know it's, charging around 75%. So, having some indicators on the battery that everything is functional, without having to go look at the app. Now, the apps are great, right? It's wonderful to be able to see things on your smartphone, but it's also nice to be able to just walk by the Solarc and touch the screen and see any information that you want. So both the Solarc and the Briggs& and Stratton units here, they have the ability to just see how the system is functioning, without using an app.
Another key thing for the homeowners is understanding the install time. How long will it take for us to be at your home to get this done? And one nice advantage of our Briggs& and Stratton battery is its quick install time. And one thing that makes that possible is its rapid stack technology. You set the base, whether the floor base or the wall base, you put a bracket on the wall, and then you simply stack the batteries. All the communication and the power are stacked together. And then on the top, the controller is where we're going to make our home runs out of the battery out to the inverter.
Yeah, and
And
Daniel, I think this is more of a selling point for the installers, but
both,
ultimately it is
yeah.
a selling point for the homeowner because the faster the installation goes, the lower your bid can be, and you can still make a good return, right? So having this battery can go on the we have videos where we've assembled it, Daniel, in
You and
less
I,
than 10
Nathan.
minutes. And that in a real job scenario, this is a half hour to an hour to get the battery fully assembled to be working on your home run connections. That's fast. That's a very fast installation. And then, you're moving on to making your connections on the inverter and saving time. And so one of the things we did with this system is really try to design it in an efficient way that can get it up on the wall quickly. So in terms of selling, a sale point for the homeowner, this is a system that you can put fully together in a day, right? And that's, that is a fast install.
Absolutely. Nathan, you already talked a little bit about the temperature range as well. One thing that homeowners usually like to hear about is warranty as well, as well as you installers. 10-year warranty. What's unique about our warranty, though, is that we have unlimited cycles at 100% depth of discharge with no throughput. Some of our competition might say a certain number of cycles, a certain amount of energy in and energy out, and a year warranty. And whichever comes first, it's up. With Briggs& and Stratton, we have a 10-year unlimited warranty. And at the end of that 10 years, we warranty a 75% retained energy capacity on these
It means if you
batteries.
buy a 20 kilowatt hour system, you've got 20 kilowatt hours of usable energy. 10 years later, we're guaranteeing that you're still going to have 15 kilowatt hours left of usable energy in that battery bank. The systems today, are lasting a lot longer, and this is an excellent battery that's on the screen in front of you. And we're standing behind it with that warranty, right? As Daniel said, full 10-year warranty, no limited number of cycles, etc. So,
And also, Nathan, I
so
like that it's pretty compact, right? Yeah, it's maybe a little over 2 feet wide, but it's not very deep. It's only
yeah, it's
about
two and a half
seven
feet
inches
wide,
deep.
about 7 inches deep, and in a full stack assembled is about 5 feet tall. Daniel, I did want to point out here, the temperature range for discharge, if you are in the dead of night, you can discharge this thing down to -4 Fahrenheit. So you'll still have backup power in the middle of the night. If it's very cold, charging starts at 14 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty cold, being able to handle those colder temperatures.
And the battery will protect itself, right? It can transmit its temperature to the inverter and curtail a charge if it knows it's too cold.
Exactly.
We can stack these up, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we position some of these packages as well. I think the key takeaway on this slide, Nathan, is that if you got a solar 15K, right, that 15K can draw a maximum of 12,000 watts out of the batteries. Our three stack that you see can output up to 14,000 watts. So that's a key kind of package right there. A solar 15K, a three stack, 20 kilowatt hours of storage is going to allow that solar to discharge its full output if it's ever called upon to do that. Of course, we can always add up additional battery stacks, and we can go up to 6 stacks. Nathan, what you really like, I know, is that solar 15K has dual battery inputs. So we can have 2 stacks of 3, or perhaps even 2 stacks of 2, and not need an external combiner, although I know you really like those Victron combiners.
I do. And so if you're doing 3 or 4 stacks, I know the midnight combiners, and we sell them. I know they're very popular, but the Victron Class T combiners as well, the Class T power ins are great options, and under $200 a piece. So each one, those are stackable. So each one you buy has the ability to bring in 2 fused battery inputs and has 2 outputs on it. So if you stack 2 of these together, you can, put 4 stacks on them. You've got a combiner with fuses for under $500, 2 outputs to 2 inverters. So the most common configurations we're seeing, Daniel, it's a 3 stack of batteries and a single solar arc, and then 2 stacks of batteries and a single
Yep.
solar arc. Those are probably the most common configurations. Of course, doing a 2 stack, you could still, take good advantage of the solar arc. You're going to be limited about 10.5 kilowatts. But if you're doing, if you only have very small duration backups, that's a way to get into the game, and you could add more batteries later on. So that's also an opportunity as you're selling to customers is, hey, we can start small, and if you decide you want bigger, you can scale up later too.
Yeah, Nathan, I was a SunPower dealer for a long time, and some of the training they gave me is always present the larger package first. And then if they say, oh, that's too expensive, then have that smaller package in your back pocket so that you can always step back and say, well, will this work for you?
Right.
And here is an example of some of those packages that you can position. Of course, these aren't set in stone. You can always add additional batteries to these. But again, don't. Another tip was never present too many options to the homeowner, Nathan, and don't confuse them. So give them some options, allow them to step back a little bit, and keep it simple as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Of course, we are really excited about our 6.6 stacking battery, but we still have our Amplify and Phi battery. And these make great lead acid battery replacements. And also, Nathan, we can scale these up a lot higher, right? We talked about 6 stacks, 128 kilowatt hours, but we can go a lot bigger on especially that Phi battery. Is that right?
Yeah, with the Amplify battery, we can do up to 60 batteries, about 240 kilowatt hours, a little less. And then with the 5 batteries, we don't have a limit, right? You can do custom combiners. We've seen multiple systems with 100 or so of these batteries. That's 400 kilowatt hours. So we've seen some community centers. We've seen villages up in Alaska. There are airports out in Hawaii. There's an airport that has, I think it's 80 of these. Um, so you can do very large systems with that 5 battery. And then also, if you need a high voltage battery for a commercial, We produce high voltage batteries up to 1200 volts, right? And so these are made by 24 or 48. These are the only batteries we do in series. So they're
Yep.
blocks of 24 or 48 volts. And we can go up to 1200 volts with those. Very large systems there too.
Yeah,
So
and what we mean, right, is that the simplify, the amplify, and the phi are all 48-volt nominal, right? So we're feeding 48 volts into the inverter. And then what you're saying, Nathan, is that with the high voltage, we can run them in series and build up higher battery voltages and feed them into the inverter. Notably, though, the phi still comes into 24 volts as well. Don't want to spend a lot of time on generators. Just know that we do have generators available. Nathan, I'm sorry, I should have taken off that 10 kilowatt generator on the far left there. That one is discontinued, but the 13 comes in really nice. All of these are either propane or natural gas. We do sell transfer switches as well, and these can be controlled automatically with the 2-wire signal to start. And a lot of times with the solar, you don't need the transfer switch, but we do talk about some scenarios where we can use a transfer switch, especially if we're bringing the generator in on the grid port on that solar as well.
and
NG
we
Max.
recommend it, of course, when you have AC coupled solar and you want a generator too, you will need a transfer switch to do that. And some systems as well, the customer already has a generator. The customer already has a transfer switch on site. So it can be useful using that transfer switch. So if you've already got one on site, absolutely consider using it. And that leaves the generator port on the Solar are open for smart load panel, right? So
And
there's
Nathan
the
and
benefit.
I and our sales application engineers are happy to talk through some of these scenarios more in depth. We'll have our email at the end, and feel free to reach out to us and we'll connect and we can talk as well. Quickly, NG Max is our technology that allows us to run our generators on natural gas and not derate. So if you got a 22K generator, it's going to produce 22, whether it's on propane or natural gas as well. Another key thing, Nathan, when we're doing in-home sales is to bring literature. It's always good to have something physical, I've noticed, and ideally you're going to close the sale and make that sale that day. But if you have to have leave behinds, you can definitely have some literature that's available to you. We can either send it to you, or we can even have the PDF copies that you could print out yourself. But having that leave behind, I think, is really key so that they can have something to look at other than maybe your tablet or your screen while we're sitting down at that kitchen table. So when we're sitting down with the homeowner, it's really important to understand what their scenario is. Do they not have existing solar? Do they have existing solar? Maybe, like you said, Nathan, they have a generator, or maybe they even have an existing energy storage system. So it's important to understand a lot of those variables ahead of time. Ideally, maybe that's during the intake call when they call your company. So you have some of those details ahead of time, so you know how you're going to shift that conversation when we're talking to the homeowner. It's going to definitely make you anticipate some of the questions they might have. So Nathan, like you said, right, if they have existing solar, we're going to start talking about the concept of AC coupled solar, how that might work, and what that's going to mean, that it's not necessarily going to need us to go up on the roof, and we can be up there and just make the system connect in seamlessly as well. Nathan, I'm looking in that bottom right-hand picture of that little solar panel. I remember at my SunPower days, we had a little frame like that talked about the different cell technologies as well, the back contact and the cell break demo. So if anybody was ever a SunPower dealer, put it in the Q&A. Let me know if you've had that as well. But it's kind of cool to be able to explain some of the technology and some of the advancements that we've seen in the industry and show that. It's kind of a show and tell. I've always felt like that works a little bit as well. So again, to prepare for our meeting before we even show up at the house, really, it's good to have their energy consumption. Now, usually during the intake call, when they call the company and they're talking to the office, have them give them their utility bills, or we were able to get their account number from their utility, and then we could pull that consumption data ahead of time. And then that would allow us to understand what some of the loads are, but also have conversations, ask them if they're going to make any purchases in the near future that might increase their electrical consumption. maybe an EV or maybe a heat pump or something. And that way you can start talking about why we might want to oversize their system to anticipate some of those future loads, right, Nathan? I know you just got an EV and you no longer pay $4 or $5 a gallon for gas. So if you're
Yeah,
able to produce that
yeah,
power, go ahead.
you've said in the past, being an energy consultant is important, and I think that is, very very important thing to be when you're doing this sale, right? And part of that means coming prepared, as this slide is talking to, coming with utility bill. One of the things about my utility bill is it does show me how much I'm spending during the different rates. Right. So I have an off-peak rate, I have a mid-peak rate, and then I have a full peak rate. Um, and that's, looking at where you're spending money. If you're talking to the customer and they're doing their laundry, they're running that electric dryer at 5 p.m. when the electricity rates are most expensive, right? You can look at their bills, you can be a consultant with them, and then you can show them how a battery, how an inverter, how potentially solar can impact that electricity bill. And if you do have solar, and you have a west-facing array, absolutely, it's great to do your laundry at 5 p.m., right? Or 4 p.m., or whenever you're doing it. But it's not great if you don't have those things. And I think being a consultant means understanding how they're currently using electricity, um, and ultimately saving them money. For us, Daniel, I mean, you brought in the car. I mean, that's the difference between 2025 and 2015 is now affordable electric vehicles are available and they do save you money. It costs about $15 to fill up our long range Model Y. Like that's
Hmm.
cheap compared to what it costs me in fuel. And I understand across the country, many people just spend maybe $50 at the pump or $40 at the pump. Out here in California, it's more. It's like $70 at the pump. Um, but being a consultant there and showing them, hey, look, by bringing in this solar, you could actually not only power your home for free, but also drive your vehicles for free.
Yeah, that's a
That's
great point.
important.
Nathan, another really key important thing to understand is their interconnection policies, whether or not they have that ability for net metering. Also, keep in mind what their utility interconnection rate structure might change after they go solar. For example, here in California, I could be on a tiered rate, and when you go solar, you're forced onto one of those time of use rates. So understanding what the utility policy is in the beginning, and that's going to be crucial here when we talk about some of these solar proposal tools, is that when we use these tools, we need to understand what rate structure they're on and what rate structure they're going to be put onto after they've gone solar and or batteries. Also really important to understand some of the incentives. Additionally, with that 30% tax credit, there's sometimes state or even local utility rebates as well as in grants. Additionally, understanding the financing options. And we're going to talk about this. We should always not only have a cash option, but also a financing option so
You know,
that people, go ahead, Nathan.
I just wanted to say, Daniel, you were mentioning the incentives, and I know that's the last bullet point here, and then you're talking about the financing as well. There's a website that you've recommended in the past, and I'm
And we
wondering.
have a slide coming up on that as
Oh,
well.
wonderful. Okay.
So again, we're going to position this. I think positioning backup power. I mean, what is it worth it to you to keep your lights on, to keep, especially coming out of COVID when a lot of people are more working from home, we're home as a haven. So understanding backup power, I think is really key and positioning that in front of, maybe even in front of saving money. Of course, it all matters, but having resiliency, having the ability to keep the food cold in your fridge, perhaps being able to have the air conditioning still work is really crucial. I think that's a great selling point. Nathan, when I was first doing this sales, again, we had net metering. So why not just use the battery as your grid? Why not? Is because
Yeah.
we could keep the lights on in the home and have that resiliency as well. Of course, being able to save money is crucial. And Nathan, when we go to the home and we're listening to the homeowners, however, you've ever heard of people say, maybe I just don't like the utility. I want to defect from the grid. We can speak to that, right? And that with having solar and an energy storage system, You can say, you know what, utility, I don't want to use you. I can be my own power company. And listening and paying attention to what the homeowner's motivations are, we can then come back and don't say anything, listen. I think that's the key thing here at any of these sales is listen, and then come back at the end of the sale when we're ready to close and then repeat what they had said and reinforce some of the aspects that they had said. And that's really going to help you close the sale as well.
I think a key point is kind of technical is that, the cost of electricity across the country has been going up. The demand for electricity across the country is going up. And if you get an electric vehicle, you're going to see that your demand, your personal demand goes up as well, right? But the cost to make your own electricity with solar has drastically gone down, right? The last 20 years has just continued to fall, and solar panels are so cheap now, right? And batteries, the cost of batteries are very affordable. I mean, we're talking about systems that are going to last 15 years, right? Systems that might last 20 years. There's a real incentive to do exactly what you were saying. Some customers might just not want to pay the utility, right? I mean, there are utilities out here in California that have caused people to lose their homes. They've started fires, right? Um, and I understand that people look at these utilities and they think, well, why can't I make my own electricity? The answer is you now can, right? You can with very little degradation. Daniel, I mentioned to you over this weekend, right? I cleaned solar panels on a system that's 8 years old. The production today, 8 years later, with the panels clean, is the same as they were 8 years ago, right? These panels last a long time, right?
Yeah, especially with the new TopCon technology on the solar modules, that they don't really have that first year degradation on these panels is pretty incredible. So what are some of the steps when we're trying to make a sale at the home? Well, the first thing is really getting the customer in the first place. And, a lot of people have great word of mouth, absolutely advertising and referrals as well. I would also say yard signs also work whenever we're doing an install because there's going to be some nosy neighbors that are watching you, and then they're going to come over and ask the homeowner, well, what's going on? What do you got to have? And then being able to get those referrals as well. Once you got somebody, they're going to usually call the office or fill out a web form. That's the opportunity to collect their rate structure, their consumption data, maybe if they have that existing solar already, and then ask them what some of their desires are. What's most important to you? And then be able to record that. Then you can then assign an energy consultant. And Nathan, you said it earlier. I didn't say a salesperson, right? Who's going to then use that information and then perform a site visit with using a proposal tool. Aurora is one, and Open Solar is one, and we have a great partnership with Open Solar. And a little bit later, I'm going to share a link to be able to sign up for Open Solar. It's free, no matter what, but using this link, you're going to have access to the Briggs & Stratton portfolio of products as well. We're going to show up, right? We're going to do our site visit, and then ideally, we're going to close that sale, whether it's cash, lease, or loan. And then we're going to then make sure we have a little cool down period. We're going to go back. We're then going to use a solar proposal tool. Now, Greenlancer, if anybody's used Greenlancer, put it in the Q&A. Let us know. This creates a Planet Plan Sets is another one where you create the plan set. We're going to go down to the permitting desk, get our work permit, building permit, order the materials, get everything ready. Then we're going to come out and install it. And like you said, Nathan, if it's just a battery only and a pretty simple, clean setup, we might be able to do that in one day. If we have solar, a little bit more, maybe whole home backup, that might be 2 or 3 days. And if we have to do a main panel upgrade, or we have a really challenging roof, that could be up to 5 days. That's probably including the couple hours you have to spend with the permit inspector at the end of it as well. Once we get our permit signed off, we can then go back to the office. What I usually like to do is turn the system on in a non-export mode, right? Backup only. Because what we have to do is wait for the permission to operate from the utility after we filed our interconnection policy. And then we can come back out and put the system into a full grid interactive mode as well. Ideally, at that opportunity, we can ask to see if anybody's come over and talked and asked for referrals as well. And then also train the homeowner on, you know, explain that battery graph, that battery status, explain some of the simple things on the Solarc and what we're going to look at for a grid outage. And you could even simulate a grid outage just to make sure they understand that it works as well. So Nathan, I don't know if you've seen Tommy Boy. It's a movie but again, it's always key, and we don't always want to just take no for an answer, but push back, saying, maybe what's preventing you from going forward? Is it price? And if it's price, remember you have that lower priced option in your back pocket, and always try to work on those objections, right? But what we're first going to do is set the appointment. And, we're not going to show up 15 minutes early and sit in our car and shuffle papers around. Ideally, I like to show up maybe about 5 minutes early. I'm not going to park on their front lawn like you see down in the corner. I'm not going to park in their driveway. I'm going to park on the street. I'm going to show up, be collective, come in, and always knock on the door. Ringing the doorbell is always for strangers. And again, if anybody has different opinions on this, please put it in the Q&A. Let us know what's worked. It's not always cut and dry. But what we're going to do is usually get there, introduce ourselves, ask if we should take our shoes off before we enter the home, go to the kitchen table and kind of set up, put our stuff down, have a quick conversation. And then what I like to do is kind of set it down and walk around. Once we've established our kind of spot at the kitchen table and maybe on the back patio and some chairs, we're going to walk around. What I like to first do is go to the utility panel, take a look at the meter, take a look at the electrical service, and kind of explain the concept of backfeeding the grid, of what it can look like to back up the entire home as well. So once we maybe even look at where on the roof we might see the solar panels, then come back to that kitchen table, and then using your listening skills that you've already been listening, then come back and start to make that value proposition. And again, don't focus just on the money, focus on what they care about as well. Using Aurora Solar, Open Solar, and some of the other proposal tools, we can present the proposal. Using the price, offering the financing options, and then be ready to handle objections and be ready to make that sale. Ask for the deal. You've earned the right to be there, to present your stuff. You've taken the time. You've earned the right to ask. Are you ready to move forward today with this, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner? And if they're not, again, try to overcome those objections, and then be ready to sign the deal right then and there. If they have signed and you're feeling great, fight the urge to jump up, run out to your car or your truck and drive away. One of our salespersons, Brooke, they need a little cool time. Calmly say, look, great, thank you, and explain the next steps. I'm going to go back to the office. We're going to start ordering materials. We're going to start working on the building permit. My office will be in touch with you to schedule an install day. Maybe ask what days work best for you. Then you can then say, these are the next steps. Give them time to cool down. And if ultimately they say no, try and set up, well, would it be appropriate if I contact you in a couple days to go forward? Nathan, anything to add to this, or anything you would critique on my approach?
I think it's great. I think that one of the things that you probably want to avoid is trying to teach too much, trying to tell somebody too much about their system. I think the thing that I've heard is to be asking about this system, right? These are things that as installers, as professionals in the solar and battery industry, we know a lot about, and we're eager to talk about it, especially with our colleagues. It's probably not the thing to be doing when you're trying to sell one of these systems. You don't want to make it overly complicated. You want to answer their questions, and if they want to know more, they're probably going to ask.
Yeah.
What's really important is to act as a consultant, right? To understand how they're using energy, how they could benefit from using energy a little bit more carefully, right? How they could use energy a little bit more in line with systems that can benefit them.
Yeah, that's a great point, Nathan. Sometimes I try not to talk too much about tech, but sometimes you get a homeowner that just really wants to know all of the little details, and I am always happy to oblige them getting a little bit deeper. But that's absolutely right, Nathan. Let's not assume that. Let's let them inform us. Let's let them ask us.
You might end up, talking to a customer and, I just mentioned that it's $15 to fill up a car out here in California, an electric vehicle, with a 300-mile range, right? This is where electricity is twice, two, three times the cost that it is somewhere else. And you might not end up selling this person energy storage. They might go out and buy an electric vehicle. And 6 months later, they might call you back to their site and say, hey, I think I'd like to go with that solar now because I've got more use for it. So kind of answering their questions, letting them know the technology that's out there, kind of updating them on what's available today. I don't have a lot of experience sitting down at a kitchen table and going through proposals. I've never been a solar salesperson. I'm still not, right? I'm a technical person, but I do have to fight that urge to overshare. I can tell you one thing, and that's that my wife is not interested whatsoever in solar and batteries, right? And I think that fighting the urge to share too much is probably important when you're doing one of these sales calls.
Yeah, and that's key, Nathan. You mentioned it that electricity is not expensive all around the country. And where it's not expensive, that you really don't want to necessarily make the conversation go towards saving money. You want to make sure the conversation goes towards keeping the lights on, having resilience, making your home a beacon of off-grid energy. How much backup time will I get? That's always a key question. We're going to address that really quickly. We're going to do a little bit on sizing here in a second. Can I add more batteries in the future, right? These are all questions that you might get asked. Absolutely, you can add more batteries in the future. There's a couple caveats to that. You don't want to go too long down the road before you add new batteries. The new batteries will have to work a little bit harder than the old batteries. And there might be some warranty implications. For example, we have a 10-year warranty. If you go ahead and add new batteries 2 years down the road, the new batteries are now going to have an effective 8-year warranty as well. Do I have to install solar? No, absolutely not. In fact, Nathan, just a few years ago, we were doing some energy storage with no solar, and it was a very foreign concept to me, but I realized that can be okay. And, you do have a finite amount of energy stored, but most people's outages aren't that long. Having a battery still allows you to do time of use arbitrage or demand response. And then being able to then recharge it with a generator absolutely can work. Will it work with
Daniel,
the?
you make a
Go
good
ahead.
point about, solar, and this is something that I talked about a little bit earlier, right? Is that I can buy electricity at half the cost at nighttime, right? I pay $250 a month in electricity use. The majority of our use is in the evening, just like most customers, right? So being able to save 30% off my electricity bill, it's $100 a month. I might not want to go through the complications of adding solar. So there are things like that an install of batteries is so much simpler than having to get up on the roof and install the solar. So there are ways to save money. There are ways to have that energy independence, to know that the lights are going to stay on, in an area that has frequent outages.
Portable generators are still available, right, Nathan? If you don't have that solar with frequent outages, we can start up a portable. It won't be automatically started and stopped, but we still can roll it out there and start it up. And yes, of course, you can use two sources of power at the same time.
Yep.
Let's quickly do some sizing. That's usually the biggest one. And again, the solar proposal tools do a great job of helping us size now. But just kind of taking a step back, if you have somebody that uses 25 kilowatt hours of energy a day, if we put a 20 kilowatt hour battery on their home, they're going to get a little bit less than 24 hours of backup time. That's the quick and dirty math of this. Just look at how many kilowatt hours they use a month on their utility bill, and then divide that by 30. That's going to tell you how many kilowatt hours per day they use. And then understanding how big of a battery do they need to get 24 hours. Usually if they do have solar or a generator during the day, they'll be able to recharge that battery and then be able to coast through the night and then rinse and repeat and keep going.
So
Under,
Daniel, the
yeah.
number that's on the screen, right? Is 25 kilowatt hours, is that typical, right?
Not usually a little bit less. Maybe for you, Nathan, with your electric car, it's probably not typical. But for somebody that maybe doesn't have a lot of air conditioning loads, that has a gas dryer, a gas furnace, that might be a little appropriate. But somebody that has a couple of 4 ton air conditioners in Florida, it's probably not going to be very typical.
Yeah, and what I was driving at, Daniel, is I think the average 24-hour average is about 1 kilowatt of power, 1.1 kilowatts, which means about 30 kilowatt hours is the national average. So that's the national average. Now, if you go towards the south where air conditioning becomes more prevalent, then those numbers go up. So a 2 kilowatts, which would be more like 48 kilowatt hours in the south where air conditioning is common, and then a little less in places that are more temperate, like where we are. Um, so anyway, it's worth keeping that in mind that 30 kilowatt hours is about average nationwide for a day. And so a 20 kilowatt hour battery is going to get you two-thirds of that in terms of backup time. So having that rough information, if you don't have their electric bill, can give you rough estimates too.
Yep, yep. That's a great point, Nathan. To get him in the ballpark, right? Um, Understand also that homeowners' consumptions vary over the year, over the seasons. So by being able to pull all of the interval data from their utility is really key. We call it green button data, but you can pull the entire year daily energy consumption, then plug those into tools like Open Solar that will then be able to produce very accurate proposals on not only what their backup time should look like, but also what their financial savings can also look like as well. You can quickly just kind of glean through some of that data and see what some of their consumption is, but also more importantly, you can see what their maximum power consumption was. We're not talking energy in kilowatt hours, but kilowatts. And then that will help you size an inverter capable of supporting the home's loads if they ever reach that peak as well. Using some of this information, we can then suggest a package or give them some options to help them close that sale. So Nathan, there's lots of different proposal tools out there. If people aren't familiar, what a proposal tool is allows you to size not only the solar but also the storage, give that estimate for the cost of the system, but then also show the financial savings that a homeowner might see, which show the payback period. I think one of the nicest tools for nicest feature of some of these tools is the ability to give graphic representation of their home, right? We're not just sketching this out on a napkin of where the solar panels might look like on the roof, but give 3D renderings very quickly and very accurately of the home, and let the homeowner, I want to move these solar panels over here, or I like them, maybe do the orientation in landscape or portrait. So it's really cool to look at that. Of course, there's a lot out there. One of the ones we're really excited about is Open Solar. Nathan, talk a little bit about why you like Open Solar.
Well, one, it's free, right? So it's free to installers. Manufacturers like us can choose to sponsor Open Solar, and we do. And one of the reasons why we like Open Solar is the ability to give very accurate analysis of how solar and batteries are going to perform and save you money over the course of a year. So, Daniel, earlier you were mentioning getting green button data, which is just basically hourly consumption data, or even several times per hour, getting consumption data for the full year, and to really be able to model things out. What do you like
And
about Open Solar?
one thing is that a lot of these solar proposal tools are more than just proposal tools now. They've really become like CRMs. They can manage the leads that come in. They can also serve as to keep the project files like permits in there as well. And then another key thing is that you can offer financing and get paid. So here on the screen is a QR code that will take you to the Open Solar Briggs and Stratton page. And so again, not just being able to do the proposal, but having it kind of be the end-to-end tool that you will use to not only help you close the sale, propose the sale, but also get paid as well. Nathan, we're kind of rounding out the end of the talk. I just want to share a couple of further tools available. Solarc has a battery sizing and inverter sizing tool here. Again, everybody on the call is going to get a recording of this and also the slide deck. So you'll be able to click on some of these tools and go forward. So the one you saw previously from Solarc was basically sizing the battery and the inverter based on the loads. NREL PV watts, this has been one that's been around forever, Nathan. This one's also going to be more focused on the energy production of solar and what is a solar array going to produce. Again, a lot of this is all embedded in some of these proposal tools as well. Nathan, this is what you were talking about earlier. Desire, DSIRE, USA.org is a website that allows you to look up not only the incentives, but also the interconnection policies if you're unsure of what they are in your state or local jurisdictions as well. It's not just for solar and batteries. You can find stuff for EVs, EV chargers, heat pumps as well. So a lot of abilities. And if you're some of the installers like I worked for, you don't just do batteries and solar. You also are able to do the heating, the HVAC, heat pumps, as well as plumbing license as well.
So
And
this
EV
is a great
chargers. Go
website,
ahead.
Daniel, for all those local incentives as well. So for instance,
Yeah.
if you were to go search my county on this website right now, you would find that under a certain income threshold, you can qualify by the county for a free electric vehicle charger. So there are incentives in this on this website for local incentives to get you going with batteries and solar. And some of these are sponsored by utilities, some are sponsored by state governments, some are sponsored by counties. There's a lot that's here. And so do use this link when you get this slide deck from Daniel and I. Use this link, check this out. You might be an installer and you're not aware that you can help your customers save money. You can be an energy consultant and say, hey, look, this program is available in our area for a limited time. You know, if you make this purchase through me, we can get you signed up for this.
Absolutely. Building urgency is a great way to close the sale as well. Lastly, we'll end Power Academy is our online learning platform. I know, Nathan, you've been hard at work at updating some of our content here. Go ahead and scan this QR code. Not only is there self-paced learning modules that you're working on, Nathan, but you can also sign up for some of our in-person ones as well. And then additionally, we have Power Academy Live, where it's similar to what we're doing here today, where it's interactive as well.
And we'll get that link so that you don't have a QR code. Not everybody wants to sign up through their phone. So we'll get the links on that slide as well to just take you straight to that sign up page. So if you're on your computer when you're looking at this slide deck when it comes from us, just click the link. You can get a free Power Academy account. That Power Academy account is with Briggs & Stratton Energy Solutions. So that's your opportunity to learn about generators, to learn about solar and batteries in self-paced learning.
Absolutely. Lastly, we'll end with this. We do have an IQ installer program. If you've installed one of our batteries before, please consider signing up. We'll give you $1,000 off that first install. Additionally, we'll give you $100 off every battery you install in the future. So if you do a 3-stack of 6.6 batteries, 3 battery modules, plus that first install, we'll cut you a check for $1,300. There's additional benefits to this program, such as putting you on our locator maps. And we usually send you a little pack of swag as well.
Yeah,
So,
in fact, Daniel, right now we are bumping that up. It's $150 per battery that you install. So if you go out and do your first ESS system and it includes 3 batteries from us, you'll get $1,450 back. So it's $100 per battery plus $1,000 for your first install. So it's a pretty good rebate for the installers that comes to you as a check after you submit the rebate form.
great. As we close, just some final thoughts and takeaways here, right? We've mentioned it before, but when we're doing these in-home sales, right, be a consultant, right? Listen, these battery and storage and solar can mean a lot of different things to people. Rather than just jumping in and fight that urge to just start talking about the technology, Nathan, and talking about what you think is important, take a moment just to ask some questions so that when it does come time to answer those questions and make your closing pitch, that you understand what's important to the homeowner as well. It is new technology, so they can have definitely some tough questions. Be sure we listen to what they say and then share some, not all of our industry knowledge, right, Nathan, to provide guidance as well. And then also provide them with the options, not too many options, but lead kind of with your more expensive option. Don't be afraid to hit them with something large and capable, giving a whole home backup. And then just understand that we can back up a little bit, and if price is their objection, then we can take a step back and sell them one of the smaller packages as well. Make sure you have the right mindset, your attitude, your approach, right? Your activities, thinking about where we park, when we show up, whether or not we take our shoes off. These are all key things that not just on the technology, but being that person that's relatable, it can go a long way. Dress nice, make sure we have a dress nice, present them with the business card, listen to their needs as well. And then don't be afraid to ask to close the deal. Nathan, sometimes when I'm there, I just want to say, well, here, I'll leave you with this and you just let me know. That is not the right way. You've earned the right to ask to close the sale, and be sure you use that opportunity. Would you like to move forward today? Are we ready to do this? And then stop, don't talk, and let them answer. And more often than not, they're going to say, let's go ahead and move forward, Daniel. So always ask before leaving. Nathan, really quickly, last slide. For you installers out there, right, we're really excited about our 6.6 stacking battery. It's very innovative in the ability for it to stack. Really excited about some of the apps available for this thing. I think closing a sale using a brand name that they know can really help close that sale. Understanding that our brand not only is a well-known brand, but also reflects a long company history, 115-year-old company. We have a lot of capabilities, not only from our tech support, but our sales, but also engineering as well. We are a US-based company as well. And although we are excited with our solar partnership, we do work with other inverters as well.
Daniel, I know you're closing right now. We're at the end of the hour. I just want to say, from a technical standpoint, the battery that we're excited about, this 6.6, is just been an exceptionally well-performing battery in the market. So if you know others that have installed it, ask them how it goes, ask them how well it's working. We're having essentially no problems with this battery in the field. It's been an awesome battery for us. And I hope you get the opportunity to install your first one and take advantage of those rebates that we're offering for that. So thanks, Daniel, for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you, everyone, for being here.